So do we want to precursor it and then that, or shall I just play that and then we start and then the cut at the start of the video?
Once you start that video, that you're launching the recording for you. So when you're ready,
Woo!
there we go. It's it.
Here we go.
Hello, welcome to Tourist Universe Lore Episode 2. I'm Ben, otherwise Reverend Tate. Beside me is the other co-host of this, Charles, 6-Bit Glitch. And today is episode 2 of the Tourist Universe Lore podcast. And today we're talking about the Nexus. What is the Nexus? And how do you get to Amaze Town? Charles, how are you?
A bit, feeling a bit overwhelmed now. That was quite an intense intro.
Very good intro. I think we did that. You did that in what, like 5 minutes before we recorded this today.
Well, if you include finding the files and cropping them, or even the rendering bit, maybe more like 30 seconds.
Exactly. So yeah, we are going to talk about the Nexus and Amaze Town and how more their function, their origin, their function, and their relationship to Tourist Station itself. I think
I was going to say, why are we talking about the Nexus? What is the relevance of the Nexus to Turis Station?
Well, let's just remind everyone that's listening to thank you for listening. By the way, Charles and I started this Tourist Lore podcast in essence because we wanted to share something that we do, which we consider back of the house, where we talk about the foundation, the pillars, if you will, of the universe behind the Turis Station game and Double Beta universe content, and then in great detail we debate and hash out the most minute and rare obscure parts of the universe. So
it's very intrinsically linked with the fact that it's come out of this long-term art partnership.
That's right. Yeah. So we wanted to share with you what that process is like. So one of the first things the content we're bringing you today is really 50% spontaneity, because when we start right now with what is the Nexus, I don't think Charles and I have ever come to a consensus really about what the Nexus is.
Well. Yeah,
molding all our parts. You know,
that's not my understanding.
Exactly.
My understanding was consensus was found.
We had different names for it at certain points when we were started building what I would call like the space between the multiverse, and I think Nexus was a word you brought in to the conversation. Originally, I was just calling it the whole space, Amaze Town, or Maze Land, or something like that. But I didn't really have. And then I referred to cosmic waters, and that's
you had the cosmic river, which Lloyd manifested from, and I think I called it the quantum flow for a long while. But the drawings became complicated because of the nature of the multiverse. There were many bubbles, many squiggly lines, and that's quite hard to get across in a single image. So, I thought consensus was found when we manifested the single object that is everything.
I agree. I agree. Most of and I think when we got to the point that it's like, yeah, there's definitely a need for clarity to the space that we're putting Turis Station, because there's a story behind how Turis Station gets to this space, and that's maybe a whole different podcast. But
definitely
there's a story. There's a story to, and there was in my writing of Double Beta stuff, there was a need for a space outside of what I was telling, a space outside. So we both had simultaneous needs in our own stories for this space outside of space.
And now there's the third need, because as we mentioned on the last one, there's this idea of back house and front house, and now we have the front house entry point of Turis Station, the game, and that in itself is being presented as a metaverse. So we want to let other people, other worlds, and other things bleed into it. So the concept of the Nexus had to be the Nexus slash the other space had to be really firmed up, so it didn't. What do I always? I always rant about the toxification of the story and the art. But yeah, it's kind of firming up what it is, so that we can manifest whatever we need to for the game without compromising the lore and the story of how things work, which ultimately is you and I arguing for hours about what things are. So no one's really gonna. People are only going to know what we decide at the end of it. So it's almost like a moot point, but it's important.
It's important. That's why I framed this whole conversation by like a false argument, because like, yeah, we already agreed that Nexus stuff, but it's in our nature to be like, wait a second, I think I want to do the exact opposite of what you're saying all of a sudden. And then we find these ways of coming to like a greater understanding. So I think that's what happened when I was working in double beta and I said I need a space outside of space. I created the Amaze Town, and then along with Chris we started weaving in lore about his character Lloyd Baxter and other things that would exist inside this Amaze Town space. And then when you were presenting the Turis Station story where it was floating in this empty void, and I had a space that was in an empty void, it's like obviously these two things should just be side by side
So
now.
Ben, tell me, what do you think the Nexus is?
The Nexus. It's like a trick question. For me, the Nexus is where Amaze Town lives now, and where Tourist lives now, and it's a place that we can take either for our stories, or whatever media we create. We can use this Nexus as our portal in and out. So if I want to tell a story about Natch and Mercy, I can and have them relate to something to do with Tourist Station, or something on Amaze Town, or even go as far as they could have relationships with other universes, like with what's the name of the universe? The Sands of no Awan and Anawan.
Anun.
Yeah, sorry, my Welsh sucks. So yeah, the Adnoon universe that you're working on, like now through the Nexus, we've created a place that we don't, like Charles said, we don't contaminate anything, and we can share everything. And the unique part about Amaze Town is that, and I was just thinking about this today because I knew this was our topic, so I hadn't really shared this with you. That Amaze Town to me is like the more sacred part. Tourist Station isn't sacred in a way, and we've talked about that. Like it's free for other universes, other projects, other things to express themselves, and it won't really matter. But Amaze Town, I keep in, so far in my heart, and then when we speak, very sacred and bound by rules and bound by strictness. So to me, the excitement of the Nexus is this pull, what we've put inside it. The Nexus isn't really that exciting. It's that we've put Tourist Station right beside this fictional island called Amaze Town, and we've decided.
You are missing one critical element of the Nexus, which is the fact that because in your description it sounds like there is an empty void where Amaze Town and Turis are floating, but that's not entirely true.
Yes, go on, continue.
So maybe this is where we don't have consensus. So as part of as part of the journey to get to this point where we have these stories, originally we had two distinct universes, and I say distinct universes, and you had the double beta universe, I was running the Turis universe. They were the origins of the stories that were being you'd written some that I've got some that were writing, and they were distinct universes. They didn't overlap physically, and even in yours, you had multiple universes, multiple timelines, and the same in mine. I had dimension jumping, using the kind of the multi-dimensional model of multiverses where you got parallel dimensions next to each other, and the diagrams got complex because we did share characters, and we did have a couple of characters from your universe jumping across to mine, and vice versa, and that worked up to a point. It worked narratively, it would work, but it got messy from a structural point of view of how to maintain it. and we were constantly talking. Well, is Turis Station and Turis Universe, is Turis Station and Double Beta Universe, is Turis Station and Double Beta a different thing? Is the Maze Town a different thing? Is the Nexus a different thing? Is the Cosmic Flow completely different? And now we've got the added complexities of Turis Station, the game, which is ultimately being presented as a metaverse, and at the moment is a metaverse on Wax blockchain. So the Wax blockchain has many other projects, and from the front house game point of view, we want all of these projects to manifest inside Turis Station. So we created a structure where the multiverse is effectively each dimension, each universe, whatever you want to call it, is another source of a project from the kind of the front house point of view. So you could have the Crittercraft universe inside this inside the multiverse, which is actually the point I was saying. We've got the Maze Town, we've got Turis Station, and they are described for anyone who is not watching this and not seeing the pictures that aren't being put up. It's been described as an empty space with two objects in. A Maze Town being effectively a floating island, definitely not inspired by Asgard.
Nope, there's no rainbows.
And Turis Station, which is obviously a monolithic-looking space station. But these are both actually floating around a enormous multi-dimensional singularity. So if you think of the kind of the classic-looking black hole, the infinite middle, the event horizon. The way I've always visualized this kind of nexus is that you have the Maze Town and Turis Station are effectively floating around in the event horizon of this like immense multiverse singularity. And for the easiness of talking about the ideas of multiverse, is basically everything in the center is everything. It's all time, it's all space. If you jump into it, you don't know when you're going to come out. If you jump in, you don't know where you're going to come out. And the same things drop through, which works exactly that. So so in the center is basically everything, all universes, all time, all space. You can call it dimensions, you can call it universes, you can call it whatever you want, but it's everything. This was our rough sketch drawing to kind of in one of our conversations to get it across. Yeah, and the only difference is this has modified slightly now, and Maze Town became out into the event horizon as well, whereas at this point Maze Town was in the center and all the multiverses were around it, but now we've moved the multiverses into the center, so it's a centralized, easy to draw, visualized place. You can see the little icon over on the left hand side, that's Turis Station floated around. So basically Turis Station, Maze Town, they float around the event horizon of this. There was an interesting paper on singularities, and it described the Kerr singularities and some of the strangeness of how you can travel to and from different dimensions if you go at particular angles through the event horizon. And we basically, like many parts of this project, took a piece of science, didn't really understand it, added some extra words and made it an art piece. So we're calling it the Giga Kerr singularity, which is the singularity just to describe all of everything. Which actually someone pointed out to me yesterday. If the singularity in the middle is everything, how can there still be stuff outside it? Because obviously that's everything as well. I was like, well, it's because we said so.
It's because, to be honest, that's easy. There's a YouTube video that talks about like the layers of universes. So you could have a multiverse that's aware, like that's on the seventh dimension, and the eighth dimension is the awareness of that multiverse, which then itself becomes another dimension. And the ninth dimension is the awareness of it. So we are just talking about stacks and like looking at levels and stacks,
And we're effectively talking about a nice abstraction of that to make it simple from a narrative point of view, and also from an execution point of view when it comes to the front of house metaverse elements. So in a kind of nutshell, my pitch of and understanding of what the Nexus is that it's the Giga Kerr singularity that contains all of everything, apart from a Maze Town and Turis Station, which float around in its event horizon. And inside that singularity contains all the universes, including ours, including Crittercraft, including Zos, including Beast Garden universe where all the beasts are, which means that all of these things can manifest on Turis Station because they just leak out of their universe. I mean, there's
really exciting. That's the real exciting part, about the whole Turis Station project. But sorry, go on.
Well, I was saying it's kind of like they can leak into Turis Station, and Turis Station effectively keeps them sterile from affecting the stories that we're writing, which are our kind of our narrative babies of what is Amaze Town, the Wizards, the Amaze Balls, Lloyd, Natch and Mercy, all like those are kind of our passion stories that to get out there. And obviously, you've written and finished the kind of the first episode of the Natch and Mercy stories. Um, they are canon, and it's that kind of canon gets protected from the front house game metaverse side to it, basically by the container that is Turis Station, where Turis Station is a nice link to be able to draw from all of that, which is why we always say that Turis Station is effectively in the Double Beta universe and draws from all of the canon and lore that has gone before.
I mean, Tourist Station could effectively draw from the token universe, or it could effectively draw from the J.R.R. Martin part of the Nexus, which is accessible, has all the different universes accessible. It's just that we don't have the legal rights to write those characters in our stories. So we're obviously, in a very practical way, using our own stories that sit adjacent to all other stories. It's
However,
just what is.
the structure is there to allow that to happen, should it be able to happen, which I think is the kind of the interesting bit about it, because we can enjoy working as a partnership to create these stories and manifest the universe and the lore. We can work to create Turis Station the game, and obviously when it comes to talking about Turis Station the game, which is where we need kind of Rob with us as well, because Rob has been a big part of getting the visual look of how we get Turis Station together now. And going on from that, it links into the general idea of the metaverse of how do you bring in all of these disparate projects, intellectual properties, visual styles. It's it's one of the reasons why we got the Turis Station is kind of pseudo pixel art, is that if you smash the palette down and smash the pixels down, then you end up with something that kind of homogenizes different artworks.
Yeah, well, we talked about the other day when we were talking about the value of kitsch aesthetics, and how to make gaudy things work. And it's all there. It's all like there's other people who can talk about that in great detail. That's a real art. What did they call art? What did Alan call it? Art wank or art something? I can't remember.
He meant it in a nice way. Hey, Alan, I know you're definitely going to listen to this again. We appreciate your feedback.
Absolutely, thank you, Alan. And that's true. Like, there are lots of elements to what we're talking about that come from the art society, art culture, whatever, deep fine art, and we definitely have our spin on that. I think the whole reason we like science fiction is it's counter to fine art. But anyway, that's another probably topic behind what.
Yeah, I think we've got our interesting relationship with the concept of fine art, but I think there's definitely the one thing that it has made us always address is the concept of integrity of the source material and the process.
Exactly. I think that's so when you have the nexus back of the house, which is obviously what this lore cast, as I like to call it, is sharing with you back of the house, right? And it is meant to be complicated, and kind of like it took Charles and I both, and then Charles definitely summarized it far better than I could, but it took us a little while to get there, and that's never how we would present it to the front of the house. And I started working on like a 9 or 8 page mini story. I showed Charles some of the drafts of it, of the Amaze Town's first experience with Tourist Station. And for all intents and purposes, Charles has maintained that Tourist Station shouldn't really even be written into a canon stuff, because it's more contamination. But because there's so much from Amaze Town now that relates to Tourist Station, it's inevitable. So what we're trying to do is like this nice, cleaner, real clean ways that explains things like the wizards, for example, and the relationship between the two.
I mean, much to your frustration, I would imagine the 180 I've done on the not cross contamination of the stories is probably been quite something, considering what did I message you the other day? I'll retcon anything needed to merge them.
Yeah, and then you messaged me just the other day, like something about Mars that is like so different from my Mars and my story on that. My heart actually panicked. I went, it's just taking it's all back of the house. Only Charles and I know. It's all going to be fine. The fantasy Marses will collide. Anyway, so for this particular point, like the nexus for the front of the house would literally look like you said, a tourist station, which is in design right now, a maze town, which is a floating island, and a black hole for lack of better description. And that's it. That's what you would see visually to represent the concept of, well, how we and what we're calling the nexus. I would say that's fair, yes, because like,
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
yeah,
But the second part of this question at the bottom of the screen here says, "How do you get to a maze town?"
exactly.
Now,
So
just before we jump onto that, we will get into the reasons of how tourists arrived at the Nexus in the future. Um, and
you knew
it's
that was
it's
the question I was going to bring up first. You're just like, I know his hand. He's going to play that. Yeah, yeah. That's what. Okay.
and some of you who have bothered to get this far in probably know that Turis Station's inhabitants are the Autons. So we will get on to who are the Autons specifically and um, where Turis Station came from. For the moment, though, how do you get to a maze town?
Currently, uh, we've got we've always got front of the house, back of the house. Back of the house, I'm going to leave. Front of the house, because there is some lore started that's in
Whoa,
print.
whoa, 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 whoa! This is all. This is the. We're doing the back house show here.
Okay. Right
But
now,
you can't wuss out like that. If it was the front house show, we just post up the picture of the Nexus and call it a day.
that's true. um, there's the maze town is accessible through portals that have been built by a race of beings that we call wizards. And wizards is they're meant to represent sort of the peoples of indigenous mythology that were around in many cultures that were very, very small, sort of industrial peoples. They had advanced knowledge, and there's a lot of, particularly, I'm thinking of Greece, and I'm not very good at names, so I can't go through names of all these different. There's some in Hawaii as well. There's just indigenous people that had advanced technology. So it's meant to mirror that, and the wizards have made several portals, and of course, front of the house there's like one that we know of. Back of the house there's like many, right? And um, the wizards so far have been the only beings to successfully move through the portals. And most recently, the addition to this is uh, an amaze ball that accompanies a wizard, makes gives them the ability to continue to travel through
So,
portals
so,
without
so,
consequence.
tell me, tell me,
Mm.
is the Amaze Ball an interdimensional travel pass? Is that all it is?
With a soul of your dead friend, yes, yes, absolutely. And also, amaze ball. No, we can't go into amaze balls like how you separated Autons and the Arrival. We can't do amaze balls. We can talk a little bit about Lloyd perhaps as we get on here, but amaze balls, we're going to need another whole section. They have, funny
Okay.
enough, a lot of canon already from publications, Amazon publications, right? So they're a little more convoluted. Like there's
Can
physical ones, for example, I could grab. That like they are actually.
have you literally got one there though?
Yeah, yeah. I could.
Well, you can show it if it's right there. I mean, obviously, show it for anyone who's watching it, not showing for anyone who's listening to it.
Yeah, that's true. So these were made by Chris. Chris is the partner, or I would say fourth, or if it was
Hmm.
a quadrant, he would be the fourth part of it. And
He,
he and his wife made these, and they use recycled fabrics and recycled stuff. It is all very good quality. She's an incredible, I guess, fabricator.
yeah, we've what one of those made it all the way over to Wales from Canada, and my daughter loves it.
So that's how much we have to stay away from it because there's
Yeah,
so much
it gets deep.
house. It gets, but what we can say is that yes, we have we have a lot of fun story threads we're working on right this in the more recent times that we where wizards start to have deeper and more meaningful relationships with the amaze balls they create. And that's the thing that Charles is really alluding to in this conversation is there's a character named Lloyd Baxter, and his origin is, we'll save for a little bit later, but he or it has managed to get in and out of portals. He's created, or it's created by the wizards and the other residents of Amaze Town, and they create Lloyd to gather soul crystals to make amaze balls. And we always sort of said that the Nexus was like a heavenly point, and to live as an amaze ball, you have an eternal life. And Charles was like, "Yeah, but what if they just also functioned as an international dimensional pass for portals or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's good because then
I had a far
now we
deeper
can,
reason than that.
yeah, look, and that's lore. Like that is definite lore that we, I hope have the opportunity to actually put to page or paper and share with people because it's in my mind two very exciting
I mean,
additions.
this is one of the fun things of the where the Turis Station game can manifest now, because the amaze balls have got heaps of backstory. Like there's so much backstory, they had to literally be hand manifest as real objects. But
Yeah,
at the same time, they are also they're fun, and they were some of the first NFTs we made in the Turis Station front of house for on the wax stuff, and that's
yeah,
been ace because on the one hand, they look like kind of throwaway pins, throwaway assets that can go into a game, which don't not nobody really knows exactly what utility they have yet, even though they have a lot of utility, and it's difficult because you can say, "Trust me, they've got utility," and it's like they do because they are such an intrinsic part of the universe. They cannot do anything but have utility in so
oh,
many
it's
different ways.
if you're on the Discord, if you've come through this podcast through the Discord and that's very interesting to you, that part of the game and the utility of these objects, there's so much utility that like you can go back to what we've talked about right now and probably start to think what you'll see in the game, and you can probably guess many things because that we can't even. That's why we're trying to not talk about amaze balls, and yet it's impossible not to. So honestly, we're going to shelve that for a
Yeah,
second.
shelve
The
it,
question
shelve it.
was, how do you get to Amaze Town? Well, if you're a human being, you can't. Let's just put it that way. Unless you become an Amaze Ball, you just don't have the option. And we will obviously have stories in the future that break the rule because that's what makes a fun story. But for all intents and purposes, like it remains a sacred space, and that's a Maze Town, which is funny because it's the sacred lore space being with the unsacred, blasphemous slut town, what we know as Tourist Station, floating above, collecting all of the scary multiversal challenges, metaversal challenges that would challenge a Maze Town and challenge our stories. So it's
Yeah.
almost like they have a fun relationship between each
So,
other.
so is you saying that Turis Station is basically the street cleaner for Amaze Town?
It's basically like, yeah,
the
and it keeps all the,
multiversal street cleaners.
and I would say social police. Like it keeps all the riffraff out. You know what I mean? Like none of those IPs that get into a tourist station, they're not guaranteed to get into a Maze Town, which is like a fun gatekeep we have.
Yeah, so gatekeep that the Amaze Town remains a concept.
Good segue because I was going to disagree with that because beyond concept, it is an actual printed postcard.
True, and also the Maze Town has also started to be 3D modeled for the fact that it's clearly going to actually manifest anyway. So, you know,
Uh,
and you know what, we can do that because we're writing this stuff, so we're allowed to do 180s on whatever the hell we want.
Oh, if the like what did you call it? Like a Maze Town is secretly like if you're like look at I don't want to spoil or like try and predict anything, but you did say a Maze Town is secretly Tourist Station 2.0, which is
Oh
very
yeah, it's kind of like if you're talking from Tourist Station the game, well, what do you need out of it eventually? Well, there are Tourist Station. I mean, maybe we need to actually just say a little tiny bit about Tourist Station physically, which does need its own full episode. But it's enormous. Like it's miles long. It's like it's an enormous floating city. It has
the
floors and
poor.
floors and floors and floors and floors of people. Enough floors that there are different districts, there are different cultures. I mean, without too spoilery, the wizards will be there. The wizards will have their wizard market. They will have their I can't think of the quite think of the right word, but they will have there will be a presence there, which is a kind of a little piece of a maze town inside the station. However, at some point, the station's finite. It can only hold a certain number of people. That's a very old rendering.
Very old rendering, and look, this is behind the
Yeah.
scenes. You get the good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I know. Yeah. So this was
Early
an
prototype, yeah.
early prototype, just as a placeholder. We've got a new one that's now been kind of
I'm not pulling
finalized.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll save that.
But the idea is that this place is enormous, and so at some point it will fill with people from a maze town. However, it's also finite, which means at some point there's nowhere to go with it. So the natural thing will be, well, how do you get to a maze town? Hence the title of this. So how you might not be able to get to a maze town the conventional way, but Turis is right next door. I've seen pictures of wizard boats.
Well, you know what? That's totally true. Like I really hope I can get back to finishing that, because I've tried to make this little 8 story really highlight one thing, how, that these two things do relate to each other, and in that little story, and in a big bad way, where we could say that Tourist Station is maybe one of the catalysts to the Wizards actually being more external and motivated to dip in and out of the multiverse. Uh,
Almost like Turis Station is a literal poison to wizard culture.
and because there's no time and space, who influenced who when the wizards go out in the beginning of time, in civilized places, in places like
I mean, when there's no time and space, and the chicken and the egg is a super handy MacGuffin for story writing purposes.
So yeah, exactly. That's really a good way to go, because like now we get into, I think, where Tourist Station, the game, is been building and building and building, as a function with story inside it. On the other hand, we've been building and building a maze town in lore, and that's where, like I pulled up earlier, the map showed up, and like a lot of these places have ideas behind them. They're not random. Uh, we got
Where's Lloyd Baxter's TV studios?
there is a place something like that, I think.
Some of you might have actually unmuted the TV in the bedroom test and noticed that there is a talk show by Lloyd Baxter. Granted, he's only 128 pixels high. However, if you look for the Double Beta TV YouTube channel, you can find the full high res skits and shows there. But in the story lore, the only TV channel that Turis Station can receive, because it is in the Nexus, it is no longer inside any universes, is Lloyd Baxter TV, Double Beta TV, all day, every day, just Lloyd Baxter. So we hope everybody likes Lloyd Baxter, because that's all that's on TV.
That's what you get.
It's like interdimensional cable with one channel.
It's and like I like that's how much like the key is, how do you get to Maze Town? Because I think could talk for like beyond what we have, like another 30 minutes. We could easily go beyond that to talk about a Maze Town in itself. What I think is more interesting now is really like how this relationship with the Tourist Station game, and how we're feeding drip, how drip feeds in. So, for example, wizards, like wizards, have shown up in Tourist Station, um, and although we've mentioned already, like we're building this comics and all that stuff behind the scene, in the front house, wizards exist in Tourist Station now, and how people view and discuss and see, and because we've already seen with the Autons how when people get their Auton, they make changes, they have expectations, they have a lot of good stuff behind and motivation behind their acquisition of that object. And it's like I find, because there's wizards, the difference between wizards and other characters, they're a little more like Autons. Like we could create 100 wizards and they all look alike, right? That's part of the game here. Is
Yeah,
that
I think we positioned them initially to be a one of the non-player characters. So there's a lot of inhabitants in the station that bring it life. So, for example, the wizard markets and some of the kind of from a utility point of view, for kind of the upgrade paths. But I think that yeah, long term I'd be I'd be surprised if they didn't manifest as playable characters as well.
that's where I was kind of
Mm.
going. It's like
Mm.
playable wizards, and they have, like you said, like a lot of utility for function inside the game. Uh, the wizard market, which I don't think that's really a spoiler because, like, honestly, by the time I get the comic done, by the time they'll probably synchronize, and that will be like the first time people listen to this anyway. So,
Mhm.
like, it really is a non-spoiler to say there's going to be a wizard market because that's what the wizards do. Is they're
I don't know. I
control.
mean, people spoil stuff anyway. I mean, how many people will read a Wikipedia before going and watch a film now? And it's a method of watching it almost. You know.
Exactly. So, and like it's really exciting to me. Like that's where I want to see, and I'm really excited to talk with Rob and see what he creates because, like, oh, you're talking about a ancient, outside of time and space culture. How do they manifest themselves in a
Mm.
physical space like Tourist Station
Yeah.
and make a market? What's it look like? What's this? What's the like? How do
I
things
mean,
work
I mean
there?
that's the difference I think between us doing this law podcast sort of approach and getting Rob on to a Twitch stream and us doing a much more live. This is what's currently happening, currently being built. That's a much more front house. Which so I think yeah, I feels like this is definitely where the back house law lies, and then the live Twitch streams is going to be much more of a kind of a ask me anything sort of feel about front house. And Rob will be on with that with us as well.
That's great. Yeah. So that's like the official announcement right
Mm.
there. If you're listening, that there is a works to open. I guess it would be would it be tourist universe or some sort of related to the tourist station game.
It'll be
Twitter,
a Tourist Station
Twitch.
Twitch. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tourist Station Twitch. I think once you've moved house next, we'll probably
Ten
hit it
days.
up next month. I'd imagine.
Yeah, yeah. I should be back online within pretty quickly. Everything's going smooth, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a pretty good transition. Yeah. So and then to go along with that, I used to do live streaming and for Double Beta. There's behind the scenes YouTube channel. There's lots up there, and I just that was for a Patreons. I have a Patreon that was more of a private thing, and I want to bring that more to the public anyway.
Mm,
So you and Rob thought it would work if I go on to the Twitch
mm.
and do some live streaming when I'm working on different elements of the related material that wouldn't be directly related to Tourist Station. But as if you're listening now, you realize that the things are way more related than you see from the front of the house. They're way more interconnected, definitely.
But
So that's
how
great.
do you? But how do you get to Amaze Town?
Can you
Because your first answer was you can't.
Well, you can't because you have to die. Like you really do. Like okay, in a maze town, I have sister neither and brother neither, two gorillas. Okay, I have an origin story, except I'm missing the part on them actually getting through the portal because I've written it so strict for the sole purpose of so Lloyd Baxter. So okay, back it up here. Back up. In canon, the body of Lloyd Baxter is a holotype. A holotype is a true robot. It's a true synthetic, no human, no bio. It's truly machine, humanoid.
Well, that's definitely one for another time because the humans are effectively just machines as well. So
Uh, So that's like a totally interesting point. I can't wait till we do the holotype and because that's so spoilery. And like holotypes are so important to my stories, and autons are so important to our station. It's going to be so
yeah,
fun.
I'm gonna spoil everything about the Autons on these.
Yeah, it'll be good. That'll be that. Well, maybe that should be. Whatever. We'll figure out the next one. But anyway, so that in canon, a holotype body, but it dies. Like I have pictures. If I can find them, it just I'll throw one up. But like it doesn't survive, and they just take the head off, and they use that robot body with a Lloyd head that they fished out of rivers, the cosmic rivers that surround the edge of a maze town. They fish out a head. It's Lloyd's head. They attach to this mythical multi out of time head to this body that can go in and out, and you can only Lloyd can only do that with that body. That body's sacred. Okay, we're getting into deep lore backroom stuff. This is what you wanted. So
But wasn't Lloyd human though? Doesn't that break your own rules? Can't go to Maze Town.
no, Lloyd's never human. Lloyd just behaves like a human. But Lloyd's a mythical head from the cosmic river on a body that can be mistaken as
Right.
human because it's a modern holotype that can skin. A skinned holotype is basically, as you can
So
imagine,
Lloyd was never human.
Lloyd was never human. But that's never really talked about. So that's part of the fun backroom stuff.
Well, that's an assumption I've made for a long time.
Why wouldn't you? Like because we've accepted floating heads thanks to Futurama as being a very normal
He was
progression.
he was on the Transit Mona Lisa.
Who? Lloyd.
Lloyd
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the
So
way on.
he can attach his head to bodies and wear clothing and skin up. Like
Okay.
he can look like a
So
human.
what you're saying is he jumps back and forth into the multiverse, being a fake human, collecting souls. Is that basically what he does?
That's what he does. He comes through and he collects souls, and the people, the souls that he acquires are by those who desire the immortality he offers. So it's not like he's not violent.
So
He's not
so is
he's not
so
murdering.
is the answer how do you get to a maze town is be an inhuman soul collector who is slave forever to a maze town. That sounds like a bum deal.
Poor Lloyd. Where's Chris? No, that's Chris needs to come on to really talk more about Lloyd because he's built the character.
The
With
thing is that explains a lot why Lloyd is so obsessed with his TV show because you know if collecting souls is all he's got and it's basically servitude, you know that's his
he's
outlet. It's his outlet.
his okay. So funny that you say it that way because it's true. And the fact that other thing he does in universe is he makes music and he's a performer and he's an artist in universe in story, right? So what maintains his sanity. So yes, he is kind of like an immortal inhuman that collects human souls for the afterlife in a maze town. But he loves it. He loves it because he's been granted like superstar access because he's so good, right? They wrote his programming, and they made him so good, so great at being a musician and a performer that everyone loves him, and he reaches stardom and fandom and all that. It basically makes him he's an occult leader, but he does that on the side to being a musician, a popular musician, who many would say are cult leaders anyway, right?
So he's kind of a kind of a cross like a multiverse TikTok star crossed with the Grim Reaper.
Kind of, yeah, like a happy Grim Reaper though, one that you meet on good terms. And I think that's part of what makes it fun is that he's doing a really morbid thing, and we can show it morbid because like there's ritual that's in canon. You can buy it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Like your child has read the books where they put the bodies into a particular.
Do we need to say links in the description below, assuming we remember to put them in?
I won't. Search it, double beta Amazon. Anyway, so there is like grimness but the fun part about Lloyd anyway, that's back of the house, right? So Lloyd does collect souls, but those often are people who even because they're not in Lloyd is only the Reaper, as you say. They're not the people who want to go to a maze town don't really care about Lloyd. They want to go to a maze town in their afterlife. They often search it like a religious fanatic.
So they spend their whole life devoutly looking for a maze town, and at the day that they finally get access to a maze town, they're greeted by Lloyd.
It's more like they learn that Lloyd can get them in, and yeah, that's the part. Like, imagine you spend your whole life looking for Jesus, and you find out Jesus is Lloyd, a sort of hacked up superstar,
like a shitty magician.
yeah, exactly. like with attitude. Lloyd's amazing though. Like we shouldn't shit him too much because he's very funny.
No,
Like
no,
Chris, like
I'm being mean. I'm being
improv.
mean, but yeah.
No, like go to the YouTube if you're really keen because Chris Sperry, our co-creators here, he really does a lot of the improv part of Lloyd and like the Christmas one, for example.
Hmm.
I love it a lot. Where Lloyd and Chris sing to Duckman at the door, Christmas carols.
I love the fact that there's so much time being spent before the kind of Turis Station the game was manifest. There's been so much time in building the world behind it, and it's come out in so many avenues that it's just there now. It's all part of it.
It's all part of it.
Yeah.
And I like this ability to like for those of you who come into this through the game, like we can now curate almost how we share it, really, as opposed to just the randomness of before. And it makes more sense as well.
So I have a question.
Hmm.
Can anyone from Turis ever go to a maze town directly? Because they don't have to travel through the Cosmic River. They don't have to travel through the multiverse. They're like next door.
Natch and Mercy get trapped, don't they? In
Who?
yeah, Natch and Mercy, two characters that you will see on Tourist Station because there's two Tourist Station characters. They're not solely devoted to that place, but they're on the station. They're my avatar and your avatar, correct? And so our avatars are Natch and Mercy in story. When they pass through a portal in a maze town, they die. So to answer your question, no. Now,
I didn't say portal though. Can't. What? Yeah. What if a maze town floated up next to Turis and someone just hurled themselves out of Turis in a spacesuit, and
oh, it
landed in the
just like
maze
did the
town?
whole like
Yeah. No portal. They don't need to know. They know portals or anything. Hovering above a maze town. They're like right incursion. I'm just saying.
should we? Is this,
Hypothetically, if we fall out, can a maze town be invaded by tourists if it runs out of space? Can they drop shock troopers from the sky onto a maze town?
I think it would. I think it would be a different way because the wizards are so in their nature, like exploratory and open, and like they're merchants. They're like super merchants, right? They're like Ferengi style merchants. They love to trade and
Okay,
share technology. So it's more
tourist,
like you'd be invited. You could just be invited. If you
tourist
feel like,
rocks up underneath, digs up through the bottom.
oh my god, like that's a warlike. We have the Oram, don't we? Was it Oram? Oram.
The Oram. Oh yeah, well the Oram are another thing.
So like I think let's save the conflict of a maze town for the Oram because I think that's a better conflict than the tourist station. I think a tourist station in game, I think you're exactly right. Like you would just jump off you could just jump off the balcony and float down and land there and the wizards would just be like,
But
"Yay!"
the game is fed by
They,
the law though. Still has
they
to.
would Oh yeah, the wizards would celebrate. Like it's not the wizards you have to look out for. It's like Samsung, this fucked up weirdo that also lives there. Grandma Palmer's, who's in charge of security, who's a chicken who will fuck you up, will kick your ass hardcore. Like then there's sister and brother neither, the gorillas I mentioned before. Like they can telepathically speak to each other and they don't have a language so that they can speak to other people. So like what and they also have other telekinetic powers. There are people in a maze town that are dangerous as hell. So wizards, yay. It's like
So
porgs or whatever.
so what you're
Yay.
saying is
Hostile food.
when I write the chapter on the war, then it really does sound like it needs to be an incursion with mole machines underneath,
Come up from underneath.
up from underneath, drain the cosmic river from around the maze town,
They
leave
would know.
no method of escape, burrow up through the bottom, block the portals.
We gotta you let the audience decide that. Do you want lore, or do you just want to like walk through a door and you're in a maze town? Like what's it right when you play the game? You know what I mean? Like do you want like a trend?
I well, what happened is the wizards unfortunately sent wizards to Turis Station to set up the wizard market. Those wizards got corrupted. They handed over their amaze balls, which you have already agreed are the multi-dimensional travel passes, and then members of Turis Station took the wizards' amaze balls, soul bonded with them, and left for the multiverse, and basically followed Lloyd Baxter around, denying him the souls. So Maze Town was cut off from reinforcements. Then Turis Station
What if
sidled
the
up underneath.
okay, forget that. Whatever. Sure. Whatever. I don't care. What I just thought of right now, which is way better, like you said, that's got to be their like the wizards, um, like golden goose for trade because they trade all kinds of things. They trade their beer. They trade like practical things you can play in game, bread, beer, fun toys. They do all kinds of things. But what if they can trade maze balls because they are in that? Then you can get out in and out of a maze.
I mean that's pretty much exactly why people currently own the maze balls, because there's only going to be a finite number of them, because the wizards haven't got an infinite supply, and they are reasonably sacred. And considering that we're
They get
ultimately trying we're ultimately trying to target the population of Turis Station to be in the tens of thousands. So if in the tens of thousands there's only 1,000 amaze balls, you know, they are sacred objects.
yeah, well, they'd have to be because it's passed through.
They're likely to be, from a game point of view, one of the most OP sacred objects on the entire station, other than maybe the drones, because the drones are pretty intense.
Please leave a comment on Discord if you listen to this and you have an amaze ball. Was it token, right? NFT token.
The pins, we've got the amaze ball pins and the droney pins.
Because I've honestly seen people question like what the utility, like you say, of this object is, and it's like if you only knew of how powerful of a tool you actually have, and it's just so it just takes so much work to get these ideas, and that's the difference between a project that people just make quickly, right, and you can feel it when you play it or you interact with it, and it's very surface level and it's very generic and all the things, there's no backstory. They're all like things you can write backwards.
It's one of those things. It's more like if you do it from a game point of view, if you do a game jam, then you come up with a core game loop. You come up with a primary, secondary, tertiary, maybe core game loop, and then you call it quits. You give it a bit of fluff, make it a bit pretty, stick some graphics on it, and jobs are good. And this very much feels like it's for the completely the other way around. We're taking this vast wealth of lore and slowly picking away at it to let it manifest. And the number of layers we want to add to it, I mean, this is possibly leaking into what we want to talk about on the Twitch streams, but it's very detailed, the level we want to take the game to. Like there's it's tons of it is experimental. Tons of it might not work, but in the tests and the prototypes, it's looking and feeling like it works. Like there's
yeah.
And it's the number of small incidents of mini game add-ons of mini instances. I mean, I'm a massive fan of the old Monkey Island text adventures and the LucasArts and Sierra text not text adventures, point and click adventures. And one of the dreams is that while you're playing, you can play as a social sim, much like playing The Sims or Stardew Valley or something, or you can play as a farmer and tend your hydroponics base, or you can go into an explorer and get in your ship and disappear off and find all these planets and mine planets and collect resources. Or if you want, you can flip the UI on and you have the full point and click adventure game narrative within the same station in the same engine. It's an experiment in asymmetric gameplay because we want many different types of elements of gameplay at the same time. So it feels like an iterative long-term project rather than right here is the one thing we're doing and this is the one day it's going to be out and it might have add-ons. It's like no, this is a living thing where we will keep on adding layers, which is basically like mirrors. It's a mirror of how the lore and the story and our working relationship with these things has built over the years. Like we've taken our sound projects and reformed it, and it's become a bedrock philosophy for so many different things now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can hear all about that in the podcast episode. Ben and Charles talk for a whole hour about themselves without a problem.
Maybe that can be the Who is Natch and Mercy, being that they kind of were influenced by that. That might spiral off into that.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely look forward to more of these with a focus like we've done today. And I feel like whenever we tangent off of it a little bit, it was literally to support the idea that we were tangenting from. So I hope if you had a chance to listen to it and you you found yourself a little more grounded than the previous one, but also it's supposed to be a little random because, like we said, we're thinking and working things on the fly. We talked about things that we're bringing up today, maybe that we talked about 9 months ago, and it's part of the nature of
part of this is we have these conversations anyway, and we thought, well, let's record them. It's kind of like this. These conversations are going to happen no matter what. Admittedly, it's a bit different. Actually, feeling like we have to talk to people as well, so they definitely get tempered and directed slightly differently. I mean, there's definitely less crying on these conversations.
There's less crying, but also like I feel like we solidify the things because now one of us can make note of podcast episode 2 when they said in canon, right? So you're basically people are helping, make it real by listening and participating with us. Anyway, I think we should wrap it up with you wanted to play a Lloyd.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of handy because we had kind of leaked onto talking about Lloyd Baxter, and Lloyd Baxter, as Ben has said, has been made manifest real by Chris Berry, who is an incredibly talented musician, also one of your Canadian brethren, who was fortunate enough to meet when he came over and when we came to visit. Makes really fun music. It's catchy. It's good. He's a talented dude, and he has just embodied the character of Lloyd Baxter. Created skits, created music, just writing music all the time. I mean, it feels like what manifests as a finished track is a tip of the iceberg. It's great to have him on board with it. So, yeah, I think talking about Lloyd Baxter, we'll finish up and play out one of the I think a Space Jungle I've got queued up. I think.
Yeah, doing single releases.
So this is Lloyd Baxter, and I believe you can find this on Spotify and iTunes, etc., etc.
All of the normal things
and links in the direct description below at some point when we find all the links and put them in.
One more thing before we play that, if you've seen on Discord, I've posted the works, the image for the next single. It's called What I Like. I think it's called What I Like. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, that's coming within the next month as well.
Where have you posted it?
It was on the station chat, I believe, when I said, I'm working on this.
Oh, yes, I see it. Yes, there. Okay.
Yeah. So you can take a look at what's coming if you're curious as well.
Yeah, I've pinned it for a bit just so it's easy to find. But I think that's cool. Should we finish up and say thank you very much if you made it this far? And looking at the analytics, it's probably a small handful.
We love you.
But that's okay. We love you.
That's right. And we're going to come. We don't have a schedule for this kind of show, but definitely in a couple weeks you'll see more.
Once you've moved house, got your internet back up, we'll crack on with these and obviously with the streams with Rob.
Sounds good.
Cool. Right, let's sign out. Ta-da.
Bye-bye.
That you're given might be a sanction, part of the set